Hello and welcome to the Artist Talk of Be SpectACTive. My name is Kirsch and I'm the Artistic Director of Brut in Wien. And I am talking today with Samara Hersch. She is a theatre maker, director, and teaching artist from Australia, and she's based between Melbourne and Amsterdam. Her artistic practice explores the intersection of contemporary performance and community engagement. She recently completed her master's at Das Theater in Amsterdam. Her works toured internationally, among others at Our Wir Leben Festival Bern and Münchner Kammerspiele, and have received several awards. For example, the Jury Prize and the Audience Award at the Zürcher Theaterspektakel in 2019. The performance Body of Knowledge, in which spectators are connected via telephones with teenagers from all over the world, toured successfully on stages in Australia and Europe since 2019. Now, Samara Hersch has created a version of her work in which viewers can connect with the young international cast from the comfort of their own homes. Body of Knowledge was realized in the framework of the European networks Be SpectACTive, and Samara was in Vienna for her first residency just when she started working on Body of Knowledge. So, hi, Samara. That was my
Hi.
introduction to your work, but maybe you can add something or tell us a little bit about your education and how you started working in performing arts.
The beginning of things is a long way, great way back. But more recently, as you said, I came to Amsterdam in 2017 from Melbourne to study at Das Theater, to do my master's there. And at that point, prior to that, I had studied in Melbourne, sort of more traditional theatre directing. And very soon after graduating from theatre direction was, increasingly interested in companies like Back to Back and companies in Australia working sort of in more experimental ways, and started to, I guess my interest in coming to DUS was really to think about different forms that could situate non-professionally trained performers or different community groups or different voices that weren't necessarily actors to somehow take the stage in a way. So I have a sort of, before coming to Amsterdam, I was working on a project called Sex and Death with people in their sort of 70s and 80s, which was a conversational piece around sex and death, but thinking about the sort of aging body and the stigmas around that. And also the piece you mentioned, We All Know What's Happening, was a piece with young people looking at Australia's refugee policy and sort of the kind of privileges that some children receive and some children don't in the world. And so, I've sort of been really interested in how to have these kind of conversations through live performance. And I think DUS really, I guess, gave me the confidence to be increasingly experimental with how I think about the theatre experience and the role of the audience as well in that performance.
And so, was it easy to link the experiences you did in Das theater with the experiences you did in Australia that were from a different background?
I think for me, coming to DUS was quite a shock because I was used to working in very large teams in Australia, particularly in Melbourne. Coming out of a theatre background, I was sort of had my collaborative team set, and then coming to Amsterdam, suddenly I was on my own at the beginning and having to really work out how do I work on my own. And in fact, this piece, Body of Knowledge, came out of a kind of crisis where I was in this audition where each person had to come up with a quick response to a childhood memory. And I sort of very quickly clued on that I didn't want to perform because I don't have my own performance background. Or I gave that up many, many, many years ago. And so the provocation was around a sort of critical childhood experience. And for me, I was thinking a lot about puberty at that point and about, this transition when the body starts revealing itself and changing and morphing, and how that this kind of this very serious moment, an awkward moment. And I had a lot of memories about this. And so I, instead of performing, I left a phone in the room with the audience and made a list of questions I had as a teenager, and just phoned in and was asking people these questions. And, you know, it was a very quick sketch really, but it started to open up a kind of research essentially, which involved, you know, talking to actual teenagers. And I had a sort of history of already working with young people in Australia. So yeah, so I suppose somehow this initial encounter of coming to DUS immediately started to make me think about different ways of remoteness in performance and distance, and how to think about, I suppose, yeah, the role of the voice in a very different way.
Mm-hmm. And did the questions that you had when you were a teenager, did they change to what teenagers want to know now? Is there something you could observe?
Yes and no. Like, I would say in some ways, definitely they're similar. I think, you know, that is, and also we've now been working, you know, as you said, through these Be SpectACTive residencies, meeting teenagers from all different parts of the world. And also since then, you know, meeting teenagers in all different parts of Asia, Australia, Europe, the UK. So, you know, in a way, there are things that really are the same across. But yes, of course, then there are really different experiences of what it is to be a teenager now in the world to when I was a teenager, and the kind of world that we're experiencing, the kind of the new placement of the voice of young people, and activism, and this kind of climate crisis we're facing, you know, the pandemic, questions around gender, questions around sexuality. There's so much new discourse for, you know, for many teenagers. The sort of political crises that a lot of young people are experiencing that prevent them from having any dialogue with adults at all. So different, I think particularly this intergenerational tensions that are very different place to place.
Mm-hmm. And now you had also a transformation in the concept of body of knowledge, because you started working before the pandemic crisis, and you started working on a stage when you were in Vienna. It was the first experiments in quite a small space, and so there was a beautiful set design and everything, and also the premiere was in a theater space. So can you maybe tell a little bit now about how you transformed the piece without changing it?
Yeah, I mean, a huge part of the original body of knowledge was very much centered around relational aesthetics, and these shifts that were happening for the audience in the theatre through the teenagers who were phoning in remotely. So maybe for people who don't know anything about the work, it's really a group of adults meet in a theatre and they receive phone calls from teenagers either very far away or in the city, but who they will never meet. And there's no names exchanged necessarily. You never see each other. It's really just a voice. And that was very intentional around, you know, how to make a work about the body. And there's so much sort of visual politics around a body, and how to just listen to a body and evoke one's own embodiment or lived experiences through these conversations. But essentially the teenagers are facilitating conversations that they want to have with adults that they'll never meet. And they're also instructing the adults in the theatre version to do different tasks that gradually transform the space. And so the adults over time start to really shift in how they are behaving, and even how they're embodying an adult or performing their adult selves. So at the beginning, they're very shy and awkward, and people are kind of very quick to, you know, give advice usually. And by the end, the teenagers are instructing them to get popcorn or to find inflatable pizza slices. I think Luftmatratzen in Dutch. I don't know what it is in German. But, you know, then audiences are suddenly lying on these inflatable things, and then they're building a tent, and there's bubble gum and music and lights. And so suddenly it's like a big party, and the adults are becoming more and more teenage in the way that they're interacting. And so, you know, it's a lot about how we are together, how can people be together differently, and how can teenagers encourage us to be differently with each other and be more open, and think about shame differently, and think about knowledge in different ways, knowledge sharing, the way we value knowledge, the way we pass it down in sort of non-hierarchical ways. So that's more a very rough kind of way in which the initial version worked. And when the pandemic happened and we had a whole lot of touring lined up, we started to think, and our creative technologist, Fred Rodriguez, he sort of made the point that half the work is already remote. So maybe we should just play further with that. You know, the teenagers have always been remote. So already we were playing with Zoom and WhatsApp and these formats. So let's explore what it would mean for the audience to also be remote and to create a different transformation for the audience where we send them packages and things unfold through the course of the experience. But we also felt very strongly about making an online, we call the work at home, not online, because there was so much online work. You know, in 2020, it's like everyone became an online artist, myself included. It was like, what is this? But we really felt like there was too much screen time, also because, you know, this is like your theater, but it's also where you check your emails, it's everything.
Yeah.
And how to make a work where, yes, we meet in a foyer, this virtual Zoom foyer, but then quite quickly you're taken out of that space and you're on different phone calls essentially, and you're invited to do different things, but essentially it's about the conversation. And we realized that that's really where the most interesting transformations can happen, is through these conversations. And yeah.
Mm-hmm. And do you work with the same teenagers for both versions, or are there some of the teenagers that worked for the two versions that in your cast?
There's always new teenage. I mean, we have some teenagers who it's really a choice whether they want to, because it asks a lot of them. You know, it has to come from them that they want to talk, and so it's always a call out, and then whoever wants to join, we run a series of workshops which initiate other kids in, and this is really part of the process of how to not only identify what you want to talk about, but how to have conversations, how to host conversations, how to discern how you feel about certain answers, how to really kind of empower the young people to lead the work, because we really hand it over. And we've also been working, like the one we will present with you is an Australian cast, but then we've also been doing workshops in Neon, in French, in Hong Kong, in Cantonese, in Singapore as well coming up. So there and other places. So it's also these different casts and different young people also kind of learn the process, and then we'll perform the work.
Mm-hmm. And is the way, because when you talk to the teenagers and the theater version, you are in space with other people, so other people can hear what you are saying, more or less, if they're not too distracted with their own talks. But is the way the conversations go different when in the at-home version?
Definitely. I mean, it's not the same for sure. The research that we did in the theatre space was really, significant research around really specific things that affect people. And having said that, I think new things happen at home. It's a different space because it's in a different way intimate. Like, people are at home, and that already is a strange. I mean, we're doing this a lot, of course, it's not that strange, but in the context of this performance, it does elicit something else. And we still work with these group conversations and different ways of hearing what other people are talking about. I don't want to give too much away, and I also don't want to make people have the wrong impression of what the work is, but some things happen differently, I suppose, in this platform to what was happening in the theatre. I would say that the at-home is a more focused, inquiry, because we haven't got these other things we can do. It sort of shows the limitations, I suppose, of this platform. But at the same time, I think with the pandemic and with these lockdowns and with all that's been going on, it's also been amazing to be able to still do something of it, because I think in the end, it shows a very strong desire to connect to and to push past these small bubbles that we now exist in, because we really can only see so few people, and we can get input from so few people, and we can can't imagine other sides of the world or other generations and other cultures and so on. So it allows an expansion, and I think conversation allows that. But this whole way of being together through this at-home work really allows a sort of feeling of, wow, you know, like this is what the world is bigger than it can sometimes feel.
Yeah, I think so too, because the core, I mean, or the heart of the project is these conversations, and I really think it's amazing how you manage to transform it without losing that that possibility to really exchange. And I because I did the theater version, and now Brut in March is going to show the at-home version, so everyone can buy tickets because it's online. You say the word, it's like the digital version. So and I really think this is something very exceptional, the way you are able to all of a sudden talk to strangers, to younger people that would ask a question that you even hardly dare to ask yourself about your past. So I think it's a really intense and very good and enriching experience. So I
Thank
really love
you.
that work. So yeah. So any other impressions you want to share about Body of Knowledge, and maybe the residences you did, and what you experienced in the different cities, because you had several steps and you met several partners. And
yeah, I mean, that was an incredible opportunity and experience, because it really allowed us to, you know, it's so rare, I think, for artists, especially young artists, to have the opportunity to really go deep into the research. And there's such a sort of pressure to just get it up or produce the work, but to have that opportunity to interrogate it, to meet new collaborators. I mean, now I have this amazing team of people I work with in Europe who I met, many of whom through the residencies, or were able to invite and just have a meeting, have an encounter, and start working together and develop those relationships. And, you know, meeting young people in different contexts, in Italy, in Budapest, in Belgium, it's remarkable. You know, it's like a real privilege, I guess, to have these conversations. And at that point, I didn't know, like, does this work across cultures? Does this work across not just even cultures, but kids from the city, or kids in very small, you know, towns or villages, or, you know, how does it translate? How does it work when you're working not in English with a translator? You know, how do you create that intimacy and that trust? And so these residencies really gave space to try things also with test audiences and get feedback. And yeah, so I feel very grateful. And you know, it feels like a lifetime ago when we really realized the work in Buddha in February last year. Almost it is a year ago now.
yeah.
And that felt really like an incredible consolidation of all this work. And I felt at that point I had ironed out a lot of the questions we had ourselves and could really defend the choices we'd made. And, you know, it's a work which every day, every performance is utterly different. It really asks the audience to meet the work. So you're on the edge of your seat as a maker, watching the thing unfold and trusting teenagers on the other side of the world to hold it together, the thing, and trusting the audience to respect that and, you know, meet that. And so it's quite magical when it really works. And I think everyone in the room feels that, you know, like that that we've somehow, something's happened, you know. Yeah, so let's hope that we do it again.
Yes, I mean, at least you will now do the at-home version. You will do again, and yes, let's hope for that we can all be in a space and share pizza
exactly
again very soon, lying together on the German word is Luftmatratze.
Yes.
Yeah,
I mean, we are. Yeah. I mean, I still think, you know, with the at home, it's similar, that sense of the beginning of the performance when you see the audience in the waiting room, kind of a bit like what's going to happen. And by the end, often we've had people dancing and partying, you know, because of the time difference. It'll be, we've worked with an Australian ensemble. It's like 7 a.m. in the morning, and in Europe it's the night before at 10 p.m. and people are dancing by the end and having, you know, like, so that's always really exciting to think that that can happen even with all this distance between us.
Yeah, great. So I want to really thank you for that work, body of knowledge, the two versions even. And I thank you very much for the talk. And for everybody who is now interested in getting tickets, there is from the 12th of March, there are performances and you can get the tickets on the website of Brut Vienna. It's brut-wien.at. So thank you very much. And have a great
Thanks.
day and all the best to you, Samara.
Thanks, Kira. You too.